being part of a retreat like I was very, the essence of it's simple, and I want to really simplify, especially if you're at all looking to go a little farther in your meditation. I want to really simplify it. To me, the essence of it, the essence of meditation is it's an ultra simplified space. This is in total as a total antidote to the increasing complexity of our culture of life on this planet. So this I find it as a great antidote, and uh, going and sitting. Oh, gee, it was probably like 35 sittings of 30 minutes. Sitting for that many sittings, which is like about a month of sittings uh, in a week, really became clear. You had to get real simple. You wore out the complexity. If you have any kind of elaborate method of meditation, it really should fall apart, and then it really does. And then you end up with something very simple and very delightful. So, what I thought I'd do today, maybe we can really do a short talk so that we'll have more time to actually meditate. I want to just read you a couple of excerpts from the journal I kept. Always keep a journal because I find out what's going on finally when the heart could speak on the page. So I'm just going to read you the very first entry that I made on the first day of the 7 days, and then the very last entry I made on the Sunday when we were wrapping things up, and then the middle. Well, if you really want to read the whole thing, which you're welcome to, just send me an email and just put journal in the subject thing, and I'll email it back to you. Glad to do it. looseleafhollow.com. No, excuse me, looseleafhollow@gmail.com. Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. Let me see if I can find the beginning of this. And then we'll really try to make the leap into a much simpler, kind of more efficacious kind of sitting. Because, I struggled myself at the beginning of this, and I've been around the block for 50 years. But when you start sitting a lot, you find out what you really need to do. In a way, I went back to square one. Yeah, it was beautiful. All right, well, here's a little bit. Just read you the beginning. And began on Monday, the 12th of February. This is day one writing. After 2 months of doing a deep dive into the teaching of Meister Eckhart, here I am back on the third floor of the Loretto Mother House, gazing out the window at Baden Pond. If you saw the screensaver, that's what the view was. That was my writing place, looking out at this beautiful pond. Not that I'm remotely finished with Eckhart. I feel I have years of reading and resonating to go with his vision. Yet I am carrying just 5 words of Eckhart into this retreat. And those 5 words are delight in nothing but God. To know God, Eckhart says, we have to center on nothing but God. When I integrate Eckhart's mysterious exhortation with another favorite bit of mystic wisdom by Paula Darcy, and that's God comes to you disguised as your life. So those 2 bits of wisdom, delight in nothing but God, and then God comes to you disguised as your life. When I was thinking of those, the wheels of my mind spin and get no traction. But my heart resonated deeply with it. These lines from one of Eckhart's sermon woke me up when I read them, and they're still with me to this moment, actually. And just 4 lines. He says, God is always ready, but we are very unready. God is near to us, but we are very far from God. God is within us, but we are outside. God is at home in us, but we are abroad. I love that line. God is at home in us. We are abroad, traveling somewhere else, Australia, the next retreat. God is at home in us, but we are abroad. Delight in nothing but God. That's the thread I'm going to follow this week. Through the hours of silent sitting in stillness with 14 fellow pilgrims, I'm going to stay home. And when I fail, I'm going to keep bringing my mind back home to the ground of my soul, to the center of that ground. Nothing but God. Yeah. That was sort of the thread I went in with, just those 5 words, delight in nothing but God. And I was going to try to stay home. Like he said, God is at home in us, but we are abroad. And I did go abroad. I mean, I I had one 30-minute meditation. The bell rang, and then it seemed like seconds later the bell rang again, and I was a little bit jarred. And then I realized that I hadn't been present for even 1 minute. uh, and it was, I just got on a train of thought right away, and I call it hoboing. I was like a hobo jumping on a train, and so I was just totally abroad. And then it rang again. I don't think I was present for a minute of that sitting. Oh well, thank goodness there was 34 more. So that's it was very sobering. Yeah, and we've all had meditation periods like this. Even the greats do, where you jump on a train of thought. We're going to work on that hobo life. Now, may we delight in nothing but God. I turned it into a prayer, like a meta prayer. May we delight in nothing but God. Well, probably one impediment to even going any further is the G word. Eckhart was a mystic. All my great teachers are mystics. The organized religions I grew up in the Catholic Church. Yeah, I got stuff from it, but religion's like a cow. It can give you milk, or it can kick you in the head. And so some of the people here are ones who've been kicked in the head. Okay, and they just can't go there. Well, it's all right. You can still do it. You can just say, all right, Christianity, forget it. And that's okay, because you can still get there, because religion is a cow, but God isn't. He says at one point in there, he said, we treat God like a cow. Eckhart said, he said, we go to God to get milk and cheese. We go for something. It's almost like the God I learned in Catholic grade school was sort of like, sort of holier version of Santa Claus. You pray for stuff. It's what he says later when I write about it in the journal. He calls it the merchant mind. We're going to get something, exchange something. I'll put in 30 minutes. I'll put in 7 days, and I want this thing back. Yeah, that's no different than Walmart or Santa Claus. So we got to let go of that God. We got to let go of that God. I once had a beautiful young girl come in here to make a retreat, and she got in and she started freaking out when she was looking around at all the icons and stuff. And she said, well, maybe I'm in the wrong place. And I said, well, all right, just let's sit down. We'll have a cup of tea. You can tell me why you're in the wrong place. And she said, well, I'm an atheist. And she was looking all around. She said, maybe this isn't the right place for me. And I said, well, no, don't panic. I said, let's just drink a cup of tea. So I drank a cup of tea. I said, tell me everything you all about this God you don't believe in. I never had asked that question before. And she did. Boy, she let me have it for about 5 minutes or so. And then, she said, that was about it. I said, that it? That everything you don't believe in? She said, that's right. And I said, well, I don't believe in that God either. She said, you don't? And I said, no. That guy, that's a God I learned in the 4th grade too. And it's too small. It's too small to run a universe. It's too small to run a life. And that opened up the retreat for her, I'm glad to say. And I said, don't worry about that God. And she spent a lot of time actually out walking the roads and in the woods. And I think she found out she was a kind of nature mystic. I hope she knows that. So, here's Alfez, who was no fan of the imposed religion on Persia where he lived. And he said, he wrote in a poem, which you should all memorize, this last stanza of the poem if you have trouble with God, the G word. He said, "Dear ones, beware of the tiny gods. Frightened men create as an anesthetic relief for their sad days." Unbelievable. You can see why a lot of his poems, 90% of his poems, were burned by the mullahs of Islam. Although he loved the Quran. Hafez means the memorizer. He had memorized the Quran, so he didn't have any problem with God or even Muhammad or the Quran, but he did have a problem with these the structure of Islam. Dear ones, beware of the tiny gods frightened men create as an anesthetic relief for their sad days. Unbelievable. That's called Tiny Gods. You can look it up and see the whole poem is great, but that was the final stanza, and that's you'll beware of those. You can let those go. Here are your options with the G word. You can be an atheist. You could be an agnostic. You say there is no God, or then you say, well, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. That's agnostic. You could be a pantheist, believe that there's a lot of gods in the world. You could be a monotheist, believe there's only one God, my God, and then you could be what most mystics in all the traditions are. They're panentheist. They're not pantheist. They're panentheist, which means essentially God is in everything and everything is in God. Get that? That's what a panentheist is. That's what most mystics in all the traditions, they might not have known the word, but they just said, God is in everything and everything is in God. It's just this non-dual kind of view of the universe. Okay. Now, for Eckhart, and really what I'm recommending you take a look at is that, but for Eckhart, God was isness itself. Isness, just this present moment, just this being itself. If you're a Thich Nhat Hanh fan, he's got the same view as Eckhart. Present moment. That's the only moment. Being itself. God is being itself. The unified field of Rumi and Einstein. They both were talking about Einstein was trying to find it in equations, and he gave up on that. But you can find it in meditation. You can touch it. You can have a taste of it. Once you do, it's hard to turn back. So it's a unified field. One of my favorite Zen masters, Joko Beck, who started Zen training at 45 or something like that. She taught till 90. She was a great taught for 45 years too. But she called God a sense of love intelligence. And I know exactly what she means. That's exactly what I mean when I talk about love. It's you trust this love, this force that moves the universe. George Lucas called it the force. Chinese Taoists call it the Tao. There's something that's so powerful it can move all this. It can create all this. Call it what you will. Love intelligence is nice, but it's a little clunky for a poet like me. So it's love, but know that there's great intelligence in it. It's not just the kind of love, that you see on Netflix. Forget it. It's much bigger than that. It's much bigger than that. So love, the Tao, the force. Another a poet called it this G word, they called it a formless field of benefaction. I think that's such a beautiful image. Bene means love, a formless field of benefaction. So there's just a sense, if you go on this road for a while, that you feel it. I felt it in those 7 days. This thing that It's almost like you're putting on a robe that feels really warm and it's just protective. It's there. You can intuit it. You can experience it. Okay, that's the key. That's the key. So let's at least deconstruct that tiny God, that little fourth grade God. Yeah, not worth believing in. Okay, now the last day. This is a very short entry from the last day. This is after having, you know, six, eight. One day we had 8 30-minute sittings. Um, so it was intense. You just ring the bell and you go back down, go back in. This is the last day when everything's pretty wrapped up and we're just going to lunch. I just wrote this: the moment you drop thinking, the moment you drop thinking about your life and start experiencing your life, there's nothing but God. That I've realized I summed up about 2,500 words in that line because I read back through the thing on by that time on the computer, and I just said, this all comes down to the moment you drop thinking about life and start experiencing life. There's nothing but God. Now that's a big drop. It's a simple sentence, and it is simple, but that is the focus I came to. The moment you drop thinking about life and start experiencing life, there's nothing but God. There's nothing but the isness. There's nothing but the present moment, you say. There's nothing but being itself. When we talk about, the Sufi story about Allah telling Muhammad, between you and me, O Muhammad, there are 70,000 veils, but between me and you, there are none. Those veils are veils of thought. And all of a sudden, we're going to pursue this for the next one as well. And then the Dancing with Spirit on, I think it's the 9th on the Saturday, because there's more to pull out of this. But just to get a real simple focus, the moment you drop thinking about life and start experiencing that life, there's nothing but God. Now, you got to experience that, but that's what I experienced. Imagine that. Practice that. It's delightful. I called the journal finally the meta kind of prayer. May you delight in nothing but God. Well, let me tell you, as a recovering workaholic, delight wasn't much of a part of my life. Really wasn't. It was work, work, work. Sitting like you can make work out of anything, and I can make work out of play. But this delight was not really a big part of my vocabulary, but it is now. Imagine that. The moment you drop thinking about life and start experiencing in life, there's nothing but God. Now, there's one short statement from Tibetan Buddhists that will lead us for the next 2 sessions as well. So get this down because it's a little hard to believe, but I think it's a very succinct focus for us. And then we'll go right to the meditation. The Tibetans said, a certain line of the Tibetan Buddhists, the real cave dwellers, meditators, they say recognition and liberation are simultaneous. Yeah, that's a pith teaching. Recognition and liberation and freedom are simultaneous. Zen guys have a way of talking about too. Recognition and liberation are simultaneous. The novice comes in to talk to the Zen master, and he said, "Master, can you give me the key to freedom?" And the master said, "Show me the handcuffs." That's the whole story right there. Show me the handcuffs. When you recognize what the handcuffs are, Blake called them mind-forged manacles, mind-forged, mind-made handcuffs. When you recognize the handcuffs, show me the handcuffs. Well, there aren't any. Because this is not concrete. This is not steel. This is not brick wall. These are brick walls made of thoughts. And when you recognize that, and when in our practice, we're practicing dropping, thinking, not dropping thoughts. Thoughts keep going. Okay, if you really try to like empty your mind of thoughts, you'll be very frustrated, probably quit. It's not that, because thoughts keep going until this left brain, goes flatline, at some point. Uh, Thought, it creates thought after thought after thought. There's nothing wrong with thought. And actually, when you're in the world, not in the meditation space, when you're in the world, thinking is, somebody thought up Zoom. That's not bad. Somebody thought up penicillin, these kind of things. There's nothing wrong with thought. It's just during meditation, we're trying to go to an ultra simple setup where you recognize that it's not thought, but it's when you grab onto a thought and then you start thinking about it. Like I did in that one thing where the bell rang and wasn't present for a minute. I was just on this train of thought for 30 minutes. Well, we live our whole life like that. And in the future sessions, we'll talk about the certain really dangerous thoughts to grab onto. And then finally on the Saturday where we'll have more time and by that time, hopefully we're practicing for a couple weeks, just this very simple thing. When you notice you're thinking a thought, I don't care if it's a divine thought from God or whatever you think or whatever. Well, you drop it, because that thought is between you and God, between you and being right here. It takes you out. It's going abroad, you see, as you follow these thoughts. So, very simple thing that we're going to try to do today. Maybe this is your practice all the time. Well, I hope it is. Just when you catch yourself thinking about thoughts, thinking a thought, really get wrapped up in it. You can go 30 minutes and never be present. Well, you could go 30 years and never be present, you see. I certainly did. I didn't even have a body until I was 32. I was just a head on a stick. Pretty good one, but just a head on a stick. No body, no. I had plenty of emotions that were roiling around, but I kept them all, under control, I thought, that kind of nonsense. But recognition. So as soon as you're sitting there in a minute, we'll just be in the silence. And you recognize not so much just the thoughts going by you, but you recognize you're getting interested in a thought, and then you grab another thought. Now that might take you a few minutes, might take you the whole session to realize that you're holding on to this thought. And so the big shift is from thinking to experiencing. So when you drop that thought, you have a body, okay, you have a breath, and you have the moment that you're in, and everything that you experience. When we were sitting in the mother house, they had a bunch of old radiators, old heat, and it was like jazz. And during some sitting periods, they were going pop, 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 bang, 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 and to me, that was just the experience. So if you're sitting somewhere and there's the sound of the traffic after you've dropped a thought, well, that's real. Experience it. It's a hell of a lot more real than your thoughts. So don't worry about outer distractions. They're just part of the deal. You don't start thinking about it. I wish that, the radiator bugs some people. I thought it was wonderful. It was realer than the stuff I was thinking about. So recognition, when you recognize you're holding on to a thought and developing it, drop it. Liberation will be simultaneous. Then you're in eternity and out of time. Yeah. Okay. So that's good. I think we'll end the talk now, and we'll just segue into the actual meat of it, the sitting.